My unsustainable guilty pleasure is probably driving, because I love to go places.
So I still do things like buy records, which clearly are unnecessary in many ways. I don't need them to eat or live.
My unsustainable guilty pleasure is buying clothes.
Like those seaweeds that have a lot of plastic packaging around.
I love to travel to see friends in Oaxaca, in Mexico, so I would say that with my life I burn a lot of jet fuel.
Ooh, Nutella. That is my unsustainable guilty pleasure, I think.
Well, today our focus is on climate change.
Climate change.
Climate change. Climate
changes.
Climate change.
Climate change is a real and serious issue.
Over the last 10 years, sea levels have risen at an alarming rate.
People are suffering. People are dying. And all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
In what ways is environmental sustainability important to me? It was very important to me when I lived on the farm, but that's already like 40 or 45 years ago. It's even more important to me now as the people in the United States and the people, in fact, all over the world face a crisis of unsustainability. We're actually standing in the greenhouse of the farm where I used to live when I first moved to Vermont back in 1969. And the Back to the Land movement grew out of the anti-Vietnam War movement, in which many people, many young people particularly, men and women who were opposed to the war in Vietnam for reasons that we consider even today, and even more today, to be absolutely clear and good. We're trying to figure out what to do with their opposition to the war, and some people fled from the United States, and some people went to fight the war. I came to this place, to Vermont, to try to make a life. Stayed here for 9 years, tried to make a sustainable life. The path that we're on in terms of releasing carbon into the atmosphere has to be changed, or we're in for some really terrible times. And I know this because a 15-year-old girl from Sweden has told me so.
I first learned about the climate crisis about a year and a half ago when on social media I saw a video of Greta Thunberg in one of her first speeches, and I thought to myself, well, this can't be true. Like, if it's such a big deal, why aren't people talking about it more? And I brought it up with a bunch of people in my life, and I did a lot more research and realized that it was a really big issue, but not a lot of people knew about it, and so it was kind of my job to do something about that.
I would define sustainability as a consciousness or awareness of the environment and its needs that influences all of your decisions that you make in life.
We have lots of gardens and orchards, fruit, vegetables. We have chickens that we have for eggs. We've started making our own shampoo, toothpaste, conditioner, shaving cream, deodorant, and a variety of products, not so much because we are afraid to use these manufactured ones, but just with the packaging purposes. So I wasn't raised the way that I'm currently living. I grew up in a pretty typical Vermont middle-class family. We got presents at Christmas, the whole deal. I had video games, I had bikes. We lived a very typical American life in the 1980s growing up. It was only really until the past probably 10 years or so when I moved to the Bridgewater, Barnard area in Vermont that I became more aware of how I was living. My idea of sustainable living is doing anything that I can do within my own powers to use less, to consume less, and to make it myself.
I define sustainability as sort of technically the ability of a system to be able to persist into the future. So I study the relationship between people in place between humans and non-humans in our environment, specifically in small rural communities. To me, it means the resilience of all pieces of a system to support one another, to bounce back from hardship or risk or some kind of event, and to carry on into the future.
What we consider kind of cutting edge or future thinking in terms of homesteading and making your own growing your own vegetables and canning, that's what my grandparents just did in rural Vermont. That's what everybody did 100 years ago. Not because it was the cool thing to do or because they were concerned about the environment. It's just what you did. And so we sort of have that in Vermont, that history of people living that particular way. So in some ways it's easy because it's part of our culture. In other ways though, Vermont, living in a rural area like this in Vermont, there are things like transportation costs and emissions that you don't get in a city where you can take the subway, you can take a train, you can take a bus, and that's actually more environmentally friendly than me driving my vehicle to school by myself. My family takes a number of steps to live sustainably. We live here in the Woodstock area, and we have about 20 acres where we do things such as cutting our own wood off the land and heating our house exclusively with wood. We have lots of gardens and orchards, fruit, vegetables. We have chickens that we have for eggs. Being able to do some of the things, living off the land, isn't an opportunity when you live in the middle of town, like it is when you have acreage.
That you can reach a point that there's like a glass ceiling of sustainability, and you think that you might be living a sustainable life, but you're saying yes to all of the greater systems in the United States of military expense, military intervention.
I have changed many things in my home towards being eco-friendly for the environment and being more sustainable. We have done many large and small things. Some large things are our whole house runs on solar power now, and we're in the process of getting an electric car. And some small things that we have done are we've switched to many eco-friendly products for cleaning and our laundry. We've changed many items in our bathroom as we phase out old ones, such as toilet paper, toothpaste and toothbrushes, shampoo, conditioner, body wash, all to being more sustainable options.
We don't have internet or TV or cell phone at my house. That's not really a big deal. I actually kind of like it, but those are just ways that we can save money, that we can use that money for other things like buying organic food, buying sustainably raised food, things like that.
A lot of people don't want to change their ways to live more sustainably because it affects their comfort, because like for example, using a single-use plastic straw is like really easy for someone to just like use and then throw away, but not using one if they're used to using them, I guess, affects their comfort. Mm-hmm. And if they use a reusable straw, they don't want to have to go through cleaning it and everything.
I also think that people make a mistake in this regard, that they will recycle every last little bit of paper that they can recycle. And when somebody at a market asks them if they want a straw, they'll say no, and they'll make sure to recycle the cans in the right place and the bottles in the right place. But I think that the powers that be, the economic powers that be in the United States, want everybody in their houses and apartments to pay attention to recycling their own little gear and stuff like that, and spend a lot of energy doing that, and completely ignore the fact that the United States military, for example, uses so much energy and burns so much carbon that nothing that individuals like us could do would make a dent in that.
So the transition was probably slow, and I think that's what's made it so sustainable, no pun intended, but I think when you make changes, whether it's a dietary change, whether it's a fitness goal change, if you try to do too much at once, you can't sustain it.
Those of us who like to buy organic food and it's the middle of winter and we still want to have our fresh greens, and the only place to get organic fresh greens is to have them trucked from 3,000 miles away in California. So it's not that we're becoming any greener by doing that. It just means that we're putting our pollution onto somebody else to deal with.
The most important thing in trying to live a sustainable lifestyle is not to focus 100% upon your own life and your own lifestyle. The United States is the most ruggedly individualistic country on the face of the earth, and the people are caught up in their own lives and their own identities to the extent that they've never been able to organize for universal health care. They've never been able to organize to rein in the military budget. They've never been able to organize enough to pass the Equal Rights Amendment, and we seem to be not able to organize enough to stop climate change. The government currently is run by people who deny the science of climate anyway. So they're happy for us to do all that we can to recycle our individual lives, as long as that takes up a lot of the energy that we might otherwise use to organize.
Well, we have a lot of, like a wide range of climate deniers and climate supporters. The first and I think biggest thing that I've done as a climate activist is I helped prepare a full day of climate education for the middle school at my old school, which had a lot of climate deniers. And so I figured that the best way that I could tackle this was to educate them. So I'm able to talk about climate change and why it's important to me and why we should care about it more. So I'm helping spread awareness on that.
Power is just who gets to make decisions and how influential are those decisions. And so I would say that if we're eventually looking to create change in specific directions, then we have to figure out how we get as many people involved in moving in the same direction, making the same decisions, voting the same ways, acting in the same ways. And sometimes it's through a political system, a formal political system like voting or choosing our leaders and setting laws. Sometimes those are the best ways to do it. And in other ways, it's just creating movements where we change our behavior. Invited me to go on tangents.
It was a huge spiritual change and mental change and emotional change to come here, and most of us didn't know how to garden or farm or raise animals or fix tractors or make hay, but we learned.
All right, I guess I'll do it.
Make sure the microphone's plugged all the way in.